Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael, and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a user named Darth Perdicious in the Cheating Stories subreddit. The post is titled, "My GF of 2 years cheated on me. I didn't find out until she was engaged 3 months later. This is my first time posting, and to be honest, I've been a little worried that my ex might find this since she could recognize my username. But it's been 4 years since the split, so screw it and screw her. Buckle up, this is going to be a long one. I met my ex while we were both attending college. I was 24 and she was 22. I had never really dated much before her. I had just gotten out of a toxic year-long relationship that didn't work out, but we parted amicably. The other girl was seriously depressed. I loved her, but her overwhelming sadness affected me deeply. I consider myself an empath, and her depression would seep into me, so I broke it off. My ex was the one who sort of approached me since we were both living in the same apartment complex. I had gone out of my way to help her a few times, but it was when she asked for a ride that our friendship and eventually our relationship sparked. I would spend hours with her, whether she was at home or closing at the sandwich shop where she worked. She was taking time off from school due to depression and a failed engagement from about a year prior. We partially bonded over her story about being betrayed and cheated on by her ex. We became inseparable. She introduced me to her parents only after 2 months of being friends with benefits. After a few months, I wanted to make her my girlfriend since I simply had no interest in other girls aside from her. She declined, saying she wasn't ready because of her past engagement. This should have been my first red flag, but like the idiot I was, I gave her a pass. We continued dating exclusively. She didn't date anyone else, and neither did I. A month later, I brought up our status again because if we were exclusive anyway, why not just admit what we were? She continued to fight it. There were times during our relationship when things seemed perfect. She seemed to like everything I liked, and we had similar goals. We just seemed like a perfect match. But sometimes I would notice backhanded remarks about me. She would compare me to her different exes and talk about them. We would sometimes fight over small things, and I would try to de-escalate the situation, but she wouldn't have it. She would run out of my apartment, and at times I would chase after her. She would become angry that I did that, saying I should give her space. So the next time she did that, I wouldn't chase after her, and then she would accuse me of not caring about her. She also began to gaslight me about certain things I remembered her saying, but like a sucker in love, I went along with it. Many of my friends remarked to me when I spoke about her that I could do better and that she didn't treat me right, but I just brushed it off. After dating for a year, I still brought up becoming an official boyfriend and girlfriend, but she remained resistant. She would say she wasn't ready, but insisted that I was the best guy she had ever dated. All of her friends knew we were dating, but to be honest, I didn't like them. She would invite me to hang out with them, but they were very cliche, and I'm not like that. Also, they had a cat, and I'm allergic, so I used that as an excuse. As time went on, we would go on dates and she would call me every night. We would stay on the phone all night until one of us woke up the next day. She said that due to her depression, I was comforting and helped her sleep. We continued to have problems at times, and she would even get physical. She slapped me hard on 2 occasions. Both were not because we were fighting, but because she thought it would be funny. Each time, I told her that it was disrespectful and that since I would never do that to her, I expected the same in return. During one of our fights, she once stated, "My roommate knows all the guys that would be willing to be non-committal makeouts in the complex, so I don't really need you." But finally, after a little over a year of dating, she gave in and decided to be girlfriend-boyfriend. However, I noticed that she seemed to keep it secret from everyone except her family. I thought it was weird, but seeing as I had gotten what I wanted, I paid no attention to it. I'm going to put this in here and say there were times I wasn't a perfect significant other. I also deal with depression, and the stress of work, school, family, and her became too much at times. I lashed out but never hurt her. I would point out the things she had done that were hurtful to me. We broke up several times. Sometimes I would break up with her and sometimes she would break up with me. But each time, one of us would relent and come back to the other. One time I was a bit manipulative and self-harmed to show her how much it was hurting me. She had also self-harmed and expressed being during our time dating, and to be totally honest, I got the idea from her. I was truly in love with her. She told me she was in love with me too. We discussed marriage, children, where we would live, etc. During this time, she moved twice, first to an apartment down the street, and then to her parents' house about an hour north. During the time she lived in the apartment down the street, she threw a party. When it was over, none of her friends stayed to help clean up, just me. She told me this was proof that I would be a good husband. After her move to her parents' house, I would visit her almost weekly. However, I began to notice a bit of distance at times. She was replying slower and slower to my texts and calls, but if she called or texted me, she expected a quick reply. Whenever she needed me, I would come to her, even at 1 a.m. when I had work and school the next day. After a couple of months, I began to suggest getting engaged, but then she started to do the same thing she had done with being girlfriend-boyfriend. She would use her depression from her past relationship as an excuse. Then she asked if we could go back to casually dating. This was the dumbest thing I had ever done. I said it was okay. I thought this would show her that I was the guy for her. Over the next few months, she would go on dates but would tell me about them and how much better I was than those guys. I continued not to date because I was a sap in love with her. However, I told her that if she found someone she wanted to pursue, I would end our relationship so she could go after him. But then, after talking to my friends and family, I had a realization: why was I doing all this for her when she wasn't even my girlfriend anymore? So I told her, and she agreed that any physical relationship would end until we got back to being exclusive. Except it didn't. We would go on dates and she would guilt me and pressure me. I would give in. Immediately afterward, she would become angry, asking why I couldn't resist and why I didn't stop her. She became very abusive and hurtful. The worst moment was when she told me that if she got pregnant, she would never tell me and would decide what to do without my input. That hurt so much because I've always wanted to be a father and would never leave my children alone. But we would simply fight and then we'd end up making up. During all of this, we would continue to talk about a future together. She would see a mixed race baby, I'm Latino and she was white, and say how she saw the cutest baby that could have been ours. Whenever she was depressed, she would call me or ask, "Would you still marry me?" And I would respond, "Of course I would. I love you." It wasn't until Christmas, when I was in Florida visiting my brother, that I began to suspect something more was up. I'd text her, but she wouldn't respond. I'd call her to do our nightly phone routine, but she wouldn't answer. One time she called and asked if I had a certain movie on DVD. When I asked why, she said she wanted to watch it with her family, but I could sense something was off. When I came back from vacation and started the new semester of school, she came to visit me. She came to my university for some reason and lost her Fitbit, then called me to help her. I came to help and we spent some time together, but I could feel something was different. She then told me she wanted me to come visit her in 2 days at her parents' house as she had something to talk to me about. It was then I knew what was coming. I talked to some of my friends and prepared for the worst. When I got to her parents' house, it was late. She asked me to come at 10 p.m. She got into my car and we talked for about 30 minutes to an hour. She told me that she no longer wanted to date me and I agreed. I told her I had felt her becoming distant and asked if it was someone else. She denied there was anyone else and said she simply no longer felt we were right for each other, but then she said other things. She mentioned that she never considered me husband material and that she never saw us getting married or having kids. She said she had always known from the beginning. Another reason she gave for not wanting to be with me was that her kids wouldn't look like her because she was white and I was Latino. This shocked me. I remembered all the plans we had made, all the times she had asked if I would marry her, and all the discussions about our hypothetical children. That hurt the most. I told her I loved her but agreed that we were done. We decided on no contact. She chose to block me on Facebook, saying she knew that if I blocked her, I wouldn't be able to keep her blocked, so she should be the one to do it. I said fine. We didn't end up blocking each other on our phones in case there was an emergency. As I drove away, I felt sad, but also as if a huge burden had been lifted from me. For the next month, it was an uphill battle. I would be depressed at night and realize that she had made me codependent on her. I had become accustomed to her nightly phone calls and I felt very alone. There were many nights spent on the floor of my room in tear-filled agony, but I threw myself into my work, my school, and my friends. But then about a month later, I got a call from her early in the morning. I answered, thinking it was an emergency. It wasn't. It seemed as if she had butt dialed me, but that didn't make sense. We hadn't spoken in a month. What were the chances of her accidentally calling me? I could hear a conversation, but only bits and pieces. I could hear her voice along with another voice I didn't recognize. It was definitely a guy. I heard something about snow, and I swear I heard my name mentioned before the call ended. I know I shouldn't have, but I reached out to a few friends friends and found out she had started dating someone. I then reached out to her and asked if she was alright. It took a few days for her to respond. She said she had butt dialed me but had wanted to speak to me. She said she really missed my friendship, and for a few minutes we spoke as if nothing had changed. She told me she had started seeing someone. I told her I had heard, and she asked how I found out. I told her from friends. By then, I had seen a picture of the guy. She began talking about him and his flaws. I just listened, but I started to feel weird about it. She then mentioned his hair being weird, and I responded that it was a bit odd, but I guess she had been talking about his hair years ago and then began to question how I knew what his hair looked like back then. I responded, "Sorry, I thought you were talking about now." She then told me that she had recently been getting a lot of random friend requests on Facebook and asked if they were from me. They weren't. We ended the conversation shortly after, and I began to have a strange feeling about it. I was sort of happy for her, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to continue talking to her. I messaged her the next day and told her that while I liked talking to her like we used to, I thought we should continue not speaking. She agreed. I then proceeded to block her number. A week later, while on campus, I noticed I had a voicemail even though my phone hadn't rung. It was from her asking if I was home because she came to drop some things off. Personally, I felt like there wasn't anything worth her returning, and it pissed me off that she had come to drop the stuff off at my front door since no one was home. I became really annoyed. I had told her no contact anymore, so I decided to write her an email. I told her that I had loved her with all my heart, but that she had mistreated me in many ways, lied to me, etc. I thanked her parents for being kind to me. I then proceeded to tell her that I wanted no contact of any kind and that she was now blocked from my phone. I mentioned that although we lived about an hour away now, it would still be possible to run into each other due to friends living close to me and such. I told her, "The way you treat me is how I will treat you if we see each other. If you treat me like a friend, I'll treat you like a friend. If you treat me like an enemy, I'll treat you like an enemy. If you treat me like I don't exist, I'll treat you like you don't exist." I sent the email and I didn't expect to ever hear back from her. Boy, was I wrong. A few days later, I received a reply from her dad. Her dad, mind you, is an ex-Marine and a lawyer. In his email, he stated that I should leave his daughter alone. He accused me of stalking her. I'm not sure how I was doing that, seeing as I was an hour away and busy with school, work, and friends. He accused me of creating fake Facebook accounts and cyberstalking her. Once again, I hadn't created any accounts for that purpose. Then he used the line about treating her the way she treats me and highlighted that part, saying, "I consider this a threat." He proceeded to tell me to leave her alone, otherwise he would get a restraining order. I was blown away. Her dad and I had always been on good terms. I just couldn't believe what I was reading. I spoke to a few people and, having studied a bit of law in university, responded to him. I told him that I wanted nothing to do with his daughter. She was the one who reinitiated contact. In fact, she had come to my house without my knowledge a week ago. If I'm a stalker, why would she risk coming to my house? I told him that we both knew what he had said was unsubstantiated and that no judge would ever grant them a restraining order. Finally, I told him never to contact me again and that I'd do the same with him and his daughter. It was then that I wondered what the hell was going on. What stories was she telling people about me? What sob tale was she spinning and why? I told some of my friends about what happened and they were blown away too. They told me that I had dodged a bullet and that I should be happy. I thought the story would end there, but like I said, this is a cheating story. A long one, but a cheating story nonetheless. So, we had broken up in January. Just after the first week of April, a friend of mine messaged me while I was working and told me that my ex had just gotten engaged. I was floored. It had only been 3 months. For the girl who had constantly said how hard relationships had been for her because of her cheating, abusive ex-fiancé, it just didn't make sense. What was interesting was a comment that someone had made on her announcement. This person was congratulating her on her engagement and mentioned how happy they were to have helped them get together back in November. The same November when we were still together. Yes, we weren't exclusive at that point, but to me, since I had given her several outs and she lied about there being someone else, I considered that cheating. I was livid. Everything suddenly fell into place. That's why she became distant at Christmas. That's who she wanted to watch that movie with. That hurt, but I got on with my life. I was still dealing with depression issues and trust issues. I spoke about it to some people, friends and church members, but the more I talked about it, the more I learned about her. People who knew her and didn't know know we had dated came forward and said, yeah, that girl had issues. They told me things they probably shouldn't have shared, but whatever. I found out all of the nasty things she said about other people and began to realize that she never really cared about me. She simply wanted someone to care for her and would dump them once someone better came along. I realized that the reason I fell in love with her was not because of who she was, but because of what she pretended to be. She had heard about me, knew I was a nice guy, and decided I was empathetic enough to trick. She simply reflected myself back at me, and I thought I was dating someone similar to me when in reality I had been dating a narcissist. But this helped me understand a lot about myself, that I care too much, love too deeply, and need to be careful about whom I give my love to. Lesson learned. So half a year passed. I hadn't run into her, but I had heard she had moved back to my city with her husband. Some of my friends had a few run-ins with her, and one embarrassed her by making a innuendo about something she had done. I got invited to a friend's wedding. I couldn't make it to the actual ceremony, but I made it to the reception. I was just finishing up, making a small speech poking fun at my friend. I was ending my remarks and was about to sit down when a mutual friend started walking into the room. And who was right behind her? My ex and her husband. I saw her and was a bit surprised. Just as she was about to walk into the room, our eyes met. In that moment, instead of walking in, she pushed her husband back into the hallway out of sight and quickly followed him. I was taken aback and stepped out to the other side of the building to collect my thoughts and feelings. Overall, I was fine, but the shock of seeing her was interesting. After a few minutes, I came back into the room and noticed that my ex and her husband had never entered. I then asked my friend if he had invited her, and he said yes. I told him a heads up would have been nice, but he said he hadn't even thought about it. Anyway, minutes passed and the new couple was about to have their first dance, so we all moved some chairs out of the way. I happened to be on the side of a door putting chairs away when my ex came through that exact door, saw that I was right next to her, and ran to the other side of the room with her husband in tow. We avoided each other for the rest of the reception except for a couple of glances. But in that moment, I felt whole again. All those months after the breakup, I had felt broken and like a piece of myself was missing. But in this moment, seeing how she reacted and how ashamed she seemed to be, I felt my power coming back. I felt truly happy for the first time. Even though she was married and I was not, I had won the breakup. She was ashamed to even look at me while I had no such problems. I had an overall clear conscience. And now here I am over 4 years after the breakup writing this. I'm still single, but overall I'm happy. And Maddie, if you end up reading this, F you. I'm the one who finished university and you're just a housewife. After all that talk about changing the world and such, all you're ever going to change are dirty diapers and be a liar and a cheat. Thanks for reading. User Ridgehand said, long story. As I was reading it, I was saying to myself, she's a covert narcissist. I'm glad you identified that and were able to move on. I have a son stuck in a situation with a covert narcissist and she's sucking the life out of him. Worst of all, they are both junkies strung out on heroin. Despite my wife's and my attempts to separate them to get him clean, he won't leave her behind. Narcissists are the most toxic human beings ever. User Charu said, this all sounds too familiar. Sorry you went through this, brother. I'm glad you got all of that off your chest. It was a long read, but it was written well and you deserve better than that. She is the problem. Always remember that. Keep your head up and consistently push towards being the good person you wish to be. This next post was made in the AITAH subreddit by a user named Efficient Wedding. The post is titled AITAH for not telling my dad I got rejected by college on the day the result came out. I, 16M, am a senior in high school and applying to colleges. I applied to 8 colleges and got 3 rejections, 2 of which I thought I'd get into. The other 5 are much harder, and I already know it's pretty much certain I'll be rejected from 2 of them. My dad, my mom passed away, so he raised me, is really disappointed with my results. He's so disappointed that he went to school to talk to my counselor and called me lazy in front of him. And my friends are getting into good colleges, which makes my dad even more mad at me. I thought my stats were enough to get into college, ranked 3rd in class, 1580 SAT, took 4 AP exams and got 5s on all, was captain of the sports team I play for, founded a volunteer project that raised $30K and other stuff. Since I know my dad is really mad at me, this week the result of another college I thought I'd get into came out, and I got rejected. I didn't tell my dad right away because I didn't have the courage. I didn't want to see him even sadder with me. I waited for the best time to tell him, but he found out from someone else. He wasn't too happy that I took so long to tell him. Also, this week, my best friend since I was 8 got a likely letter from Harvard, meaning he'll probably get in. We're both only children. He's like a brother to me, and I can't imagine my life without our friendship. I was so happy, and we were supposed to spend today together to celebrate, but my dad banned me from leaving the house and using the car. He said it's because of my behavior of not trusting him by not immediately telling him about the application results, and for me to reflect on what I did throughout all the years in school and getting these results. So on the happiest day of my best friend's life, who grew up with me, who's like a brother, whose parents always took care of me as if I were their son, my dad is prohibiting me from being with him. Was I such an AH for not telling him immediately? I think my dad overreacted. Edit, dad is a high achiever, he has a PhD from a top school and is very smart. My mom died when I was 3 years old, so my dad raised me alone. 6 days later, OP gave us an update. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for the support I received from you. You guys were really cool and made me feel calmer at a time when I was very sad. Yesterday, my dad came into my room and for the first time in my life, he apologized to me. He said he loves me very much, regardless of any outcome, and that his behavior in recent times has not been right. He hugged me and said that I was the most important thing in the world to him. I think my dad did this also because today the MIT results were coming out, which is one of the colleges I applied to as a reach. And I got in. I got into MIT. I opened the result and it was just me and my dad here in front of the laptop. It was the most exciting feeling of my life. We hugged and cried. User Saucy Boy said, I'm so glad his dad apologized. I can't remember how many times I just wanted an apology from my parents for all the times they hurt me. I can definitely say that I have fewer emotional attachments to my parents than I think I should because of it. User Even Speech said, I'm glad OP got into MIT and I hope he likes it. I graduated from there in 91 and have fond memories. As for his dad, he sounds like 90% of Asian parents I know. My own dad was very college focused and once blew up on me for not winning enough awards at an award ceremony in junior high. But when I was a freshman in college, a kid jumped out of the window of my dorm from the 15th floor and died. I saw him as he was dying on the pavement below. I remember calling my parents and telling them what happened, and they said to me that no matter what, I was always their daughter. I could always come home, and I was always welcome home. They never really got on my case about school or grades after that. User Weasel Panties said, Dad's going to have a lonely old age. He might have apologized, but his actions speak to an underlying character flaw. I had a PhD advisor who went to very prestigious schools, and they had a tendency toward unnecessarily harsh and authoritarian punitive responses when their expectations weren't met, even with peers. Because their expectations were high but their communication skills were not, I saw one person after another just sort of distance themselves, choosing not to work with them anymore. People in positions of authority sometimes forget that they won't always be in a position of authority and that the support they give now is going to look a lot like the support they get later. This final post was made in the Raised by Narcissists subreddit by a user named Born with Physics. The post is titled, My twin sister, while sitting 20 feet away from me, sent me a message to my account about how I should off myself. My mom smirked when I cried. I've been a long-time lurker here and I just need to vent about this because I am incredibly depressed and I feel alone. I went no contact with my family when I first left for college at 18. It lasted 2 years and then it eventually went to low contact because I felt guilty about not talking to them. My mom was extremely abusive. She would strangle us, punch us in our backs, etc. You know how it goes. She never physically abused us when our dad was around, but the verbal abuse was enough to make him consider leaving her. Because of this, I have severe depression and PTSD, and I had to go on medical leave from college. My mom begged me to come home for around 2 months before I gave in. I missed having a family, and I am so stupid for being weak and giving in. Since I've been back, my mom has been doing weird things. She'll want me to get drunk with her, but I really can't drink alcohol because I'm on Celexa. When I refuse to drink, she'll give me the silent treatment for a few days. I'm always getting the silent treatment and it hurts. Today, my mom asked me if I wanted to just live here and not go back to school. That made no sense. Why would I want to not complete my education? Also, I don't like the constant silent treatments, so I don't like being here. I told her that I'd rather go back to school. She started yelling about how I can just go to the community college here. She started crying about how I didn't love her, and my dad told her to stop being dramatic. My sister came in and asked what happened. When my mom told her, she didn't say anything and just went on her laptop. My twin sister is beyond crazy. She once stalked a man for 6 months because the guy told her that she didn't know what she was talking about and should shut up. She found this guy's identity from a few Reddit comments and started physically mailing him things with death threats. She signed his Reddit username to everything. If I had known she had done this, I wouldn't have come here. My sister then sent me a message on Reddit that said, "You dumb bitch, I hate you so much. You're a piece of trash and I'm glad you were. No one loves you and no one ever will, and how dare you make my mom upset. She has been kind to you and all she wanted was for you to stay here. You're never going to be anything and I know you've been feeling so why stop feeling that way and just go off yourself? No one will care. Your boyfriend broke up with you last year and I think that just goes to show that no one cares about you. I hope you get again, but I should stop talking before you call the cops on me like you used to do to mom when we were kids. There's so much I'd love to say to you, but I don't want you to go snitching and I don't want to be a bully." As soon as I saw that, I started crying and I told my dad. He said my sister was out of line, but he can't discipline her, and if that's how she feels, she is entitled to feel that way. My mom came in and saw me crying and started laughing uncontrollably. I asked my sister why she would do something like this when I have only been nice to her. I sent her like $400 a month when I was in school because my parents are poor. I deleted my account immediately, and my sister said that she found my account because she put a tracker on my laptop. My dad only said that it wasn't nice. I have no idea how to cope with this. My cousin said that I can move in with them next month when they get back in the country, but that's such a long time away. A deleted user said, "Move out. Do not ever give a dime to your biological family. They are all participants in your abuse. You're their scapegoat that they enjoy controlling. Ensure that your documents and valuables are secured outside of the house. They see you as their possession, a slave to profit from. They do not appreciate you. There's nothing wrong with you. You got unlucky being born into an abusive household. It will take time, but you'll build your own family in the future with people who care about the real you. So hang in there and plan for your escape." To this OP said, "Thank you, you're so kind. Until I can move out, I have my important documents hidden. My mom wanted me to give all of my important documents to her, but my gut told me not to. Your entire comment helped me feel better. I've been crying so much that my head hurts." User 5 Steel said, "I say take drastic steps towards school. These people are a heartbeat away from physical violence. Do not tell them what you're doing. Take the critical papers out of the house and have someone hold them for you. Assume you're being stalked in person as well as digitally. If you drive, position your car for an easy getaway with an extra key inside. Have a go kit with essentials. Talk to the movie theater if they say no. Explain that you're trying to get out of an abusive situation. Maybe they know of other opportunities. Talk to the local shelter and see if they can hold you for a month. Talk to the cops, who can't do anything until a law has been broken, but maybe they'll agree to do weekly drive-bys or welfare checks on your sister. I didn't think my situation was that bad until 25 years later. It was. Your situation is similar. For the migraine, put ice packs on your head and neck and soak your feet in hot water. You've got a pile of online support, but you need boots on the ground and you're going to need to find it. As soon as you're safe, get a counselor who is experienced with PTSD. Can you go to your cousins now, even though they're not back? Update. My hands are shaking, but I am on the way to a domestic violence shelter. I am very afraid. The family who was going to take me in said that my mom asked them not to get involved and they don't want to make her mad. She didn't even have to know I was there. My entire family has known about the abuse and they tell me it's awful but have never done anything. I look a mess because it all happened fast. An object was thrown at me and nasty things were said. My life was threatened. I didn't even have time to shower. I am at the ER getting my medicine. The DV shelter is paying for it. I'm afraid of being judged because I actually rolled out of bed and look awful, but I had to escape. The shelter only gives me 30 days, so at my job interview, I think I'll be honest and tell them I really need the job because I'm in a shelter. It's at a cinema, so that would be nice. My friend and her parents live in my college town and said I could stay there. I just have to buy my ticket. Thanks for the encouragement, and I hope things will be okay for me. 3 years later, OP gave us her final update. Wow, so it's been nearly 3 years since I posted on this forum, desperate for help. For some reason, these posts just popped into my head after all this time, and rereading them makes me want to hug my former self because I had forgotten how bad things were. I also want to hug all of you for helping me. I wrote down the advice you gave me and I used it. I really did. I may be a little vague to continue preserving my identity. So here goes the last update to this saga, and it's a happy one. The shelter I stayed in was very nice and brand new. The staff told me how cramped the other one was, so I'm very lucky that I arrived when I did. After the first day, my nerves relaxed and I could just breathe. There were about 7 other women there, and we each had our own room with a nice bathroom. I was the youngest there, and the other women gave me advice about life. They even did my makeup for interviews. We each took turns cooking, and we developed a nice rapport. The staff was amazing, and they also talked to me about life. I felt so safe at this place because of the security. A church group came to give quilts they had made for us, and I still have mine. Sometimes I snuggle with it and think of how far I've come. I love that quilt and I wash it very carefully. We also had group and individual therapy, which really helped. I know every domestic violence shelter experience isn't like this, but please don't be afraid to just leave when things get bad. Family abuse counts as domestic violence. I was able to find a job that paid more than the movie theater offered, and I told them that I didn't plan on going back to school in the future. Yes, it was a lie, but there was no way I could afford rent by working at a movie theater. I decided to look for my own place instead of just staying with the friend who offered because I needed stability. If things got bad, I didn't really have a support network and would have to start over. I had no reason to think things would go bad, but after leaving such a difficult situation, I guess nothing felt secure for me. I rented a room and my roommate was never home because he was a truck driver. I didn't feel very comfortable staying with an older man I didn't know, but I had very few options. He was very nice, and because our schedules never aligned, we left each other goodbye notes since we couldn't do it in person. I still have his note. I did go back to school the next semester when my medical leave was over, but not at my original school. I felt like I needed a fresh start, and my family knew about the old school anyway, so I applied to different schools. I got into a great school. I told my story, everything I had survived, in the essay. When my sister told me that I wasn't going to be anything, she was wrong, and I think she knew she was wrong in her assessment of me. I graduated this year, and I have stability that I've never known before. Although I'm a few years older than I wanted to be when I graduated, I realized that sort of thing doesn't even matter and that the medical leave was beneficial. I just got engaged to a lovely man with a wonderful family. They always tell me they're my family, and I'm so close with my future mother-in-law. I had food poisoning for the first time a few days ago, and my fiance left the house at 2 a.m. to get Pedialyte just to make sure I was hydrated. When I felt like I was never leaving the bathroom, he told me he was going to make lentil soup for me. I didn't have to ask or even say anything. When I was a kid and vomiting blood, my mom told me to go back to sleep. It feels nice to be treated this way, and sometimes I catch myself saying, "You don't have to," when he tries to do something nice for me. Anyway, he has 6 siblings, and they're like the siblings I never had. I learned to value myself and put myself first. I wasn't loved as a child, so I do things for myself that I didn't receive. No one made me feel special, so I do it myself. I make it a point to buy flowers for myself weekly. A therapist recommended this to me, and it makes a difference. No one cared that I was sick as a child, so I make sure that I rest and relax without disruptions when I'm sick. No one valued my personal time or space, so I have days where I don't even answer my phone and just spend time with myself, things like that. Thanks again to everyone for helping me. When I made that last update, I was crying and really didn't think I was going to be okay. I was headed to a shelter with a 30-day stay, and I thought there was no way anything beneficial could happen in 30 days. I was very depressed and hopeless, and I had no idea that things would go in such a positive direction. User Reddit Newbie said, "I'm so happy for you. You found a true happiness in spite of your abusive childhood. You got out and made a life for yourself. That's incredible. I hope the rest of your life is just as amazing. You deserve it." To this, OP said, "Thank you. It's very hard sometimes not having a mother when I want to talk about wedding things and just having a mother in general, but that's life, and I have to focus on the positive things. One of my friends told me that my abusive childhood helped cultivate me into the person I am today, so that's a nice way of looking at it." User Polonium said, "It made me cry to read this. Your story has sparked hope inside of me that a good life after trauma can still exist. Thank you, and I hope that your life continues to become even more amazing." Under this comment, OP said, "I'm glad it meant something to you. That's why I posted. Because stories like these help me have hope and create my own destiny. It's also this sub that taught me about enablers, etc. in a way that was familiar, so I'm glad you were helped like I was." A therapist who really helped me gave me a copy of Trauma and Recovery by Judith Herman, and that helped a lot. She really is the best therapist I ever had.